This is a video on how to troubleshoot or how to get your baby ball python to eat. That is the #1 complaint for a new reptile keeper or new ball python keeper, is that their new snake is not eating. It came in from the expo, pet store, whatnot, and it wouldn't eat after several days in their care or several weeks. So this is not a ball python that you're looking at. This is a dumerils boa. This is my dumerils boa scruffy. I used to keep ball pythons. I no longer keep them for a variety of reasons. So instead, I'm showing you my dumerils boa, who is also known to be a picky eater. Dumeral boa babies are known to be picky eaters at the start. But compared to a ball python, they are not as difficult or pain in the butt. I don't know how to put that lightly. So once dumeral boa gets started as babies, they start to eat. They eat very well throughout the rest of their life, throughout adulthood. Whereas ball pythons, once they reach adulthood, things changes as well, and they may fast as well. So in my scruffy is no exception. He was a picky eater at the beginning, but I was able to get him to eat using the same tricks that I used for ball pythons or any picky eaters that come my way. Or even from the very beginning when I pick up a new snake, especially babies, it's the same tricks that I use. These are not my original ideas. These are ideas that a lot of breeders recommend, a lot of keepers, experienced keepers recommend. So it's just a collection of information that I'm passing on to you. I didn't invent this. I didn't create anything special. It's just information I thought that would help you if you're having trouble getting your snake to eat. I already previously made a video on what to do when you're expecting your new snake. So you should check out that video on how to set up for your new baby snake. That video will help you. So this is more like a follow-up to that video. So if you haven't done it already for your new baby snake, I would start from scratch, meaning make sure your baby snake, your baby ball python, is in a small enclosure. I usually recommend them to go back to basics, meaning most likely your baby ball python came from a rack system, came living in a tub. They hatched in a tub, they lived in a tub, cared for by the breeder in a small little tub, about a 6-quart tub. This has something in it. So about this size or smaller, okay? This tub can be purchased at Target, Walmart, or anywhere. Very affordable. This is where they probably lived before they came to you. So go back to that. Or if you can shrink the tank size, even if you have it in a 10-gallon tank, you can pick up a 5.5 gallon at any pet store. A Zilla tank has a 5.5. Or if you just have no way of being able to downsize your tank, you can add clutter in the cage, like fake leaves, more hides if there's enough space. Just make it clutter, make it busy, so that way it will feel more secure. So that's where it really comes from. Baby snakes usually won't eat if they're insecure. Their mouth is their protection. They use that to defend themselves. They use that to eat. They use that for everything. They don't have hands. So when they eat, they are completely defenseless. Eating makes them feel very vulnerable. So a baby snake that knowingly it's prey for everybody and everything, it is going to be scared when it first gets to your home. It's going to want to feel not so scared before it eats. So a small downsized enclosure, like a 6-quart tub, works really good. Another reason why I prefer the tub is because of humidity. Ball pythons need to have humidity and temperature dialed in perfectly for them to want to eat. The tub immediately provides a good amount of humidity maintained in the tub without you having to spray the tank, keeping it up with a fogger and so forth. You should be able to have automatically about 50 to 70% humidity inside a tub, depending on how many holes you drilled in the tub. So you drill different holes. The more holes you drill, the more circulation you get, so your humidity level will drop. But you don't want to drill the holes too big. Just big enough, like this size is big enough, so that a ball python's head can't squeeze through. I would not use this size of a hole for colubrid babies because they're so tiny. As if their head fits through here, their whole body gets through here. So you want to make sure you drill holes that are not too big but not too small at the same time. If you insist on using glass tanks where humidity may be an issue for you, you may want to cover half the tank. You can do this with plexiglass. You can do this with, some people try wet towels. But to make things easier and less stress on your ball python, I strongly recommend you to start with the 6-quart tub method. It's just temporary to get them to eat. Once they start to eat, you can do whatever you want and change them into a beautiful terrarium. For now, your main priority is to get your snake to eat. Babies cannot last that long. They cannot go without food for too long till they starve to death. They will starve to death. You won't win in the waiting game. They will starve to death because they just are too scared to eat and they don't know any better. So temperature. Once you have the humidity dialed in, you put it in a tub, you will need to make sure your temperature is dialed in. The basking spot, some people likes it to be as hot as 90 degrees. I find it cooler temperatures work. A lot of breeders, it's not just me, that they use a little bit of cooler temperatures, about 88 degrees, no higher than 88, and it works. I was told by many different breeders that baby ball pythons prefer a little bit cooler than 90. So try to lower it down to 88 and see how that works. No higher than 88. So 86 to 88 degrees on the warm side with a thermostat attached to your heat mat. Use a heat mat. Your tubs should be able to withstand the heat coming out of these heat mats, so you don't have to worry about it melting your tubs. These tubs are made to last high temperatures, and your heat mat is not going to be able to melt it. So don't worry too much about that, especially if you have a thermostat attached to it and controlling that heat. It won't burn your snake, it won't burn your table, it won't burn your tub. So you get the heat set up. The warm side should be no cooler than 77 degrees. So try to keep the cool side about 80 to 77. 80 is preferred, but if it has to drop in temperature because of the winter, then 77 is fine. If it gets colder than that, I would try to find ways to supplement the heat by maybe turning on the heater in your house. I know it sounds a little extreme. Or if you have a reptile room. For me, because I keep so many snakes, I keep so many animals, I just turn the heater on in my house. I also get cold, so I like the heat. So I turn the heater on, everybody gets warm in here. But not everybody is able to do that. So find a way to keep the cool side not too cold, because that could be a problem too. So you have your temperature set up, your humidity set up, you downsize your tank, your tub, and the next step is height. You need height that covers, that touches their sides and the top. In my second video where I talked about this, on what you should do when you set up your baby snake, look at that video. You'll see the heights, the plastic heights that I use. I don't use any heights for my dumerils. I'm going to make a separate video about my dumeral boa, and I'll explain why I don't use heights for my dumeral. But generally, I use it for all baby snakes, especially ball pythons. You make sure it's small enough. Don't buy one of those pet store heights. They are never, those half logs are the worst. They're pretty much like exposed out in the open. Baby ball pythons are extremely shy, just like dumeral boas. They are shy too. So I would not use those. You need something smaller. You go to the Home Depot, go to Lowe's, go to a hardware store, go to the garden section. You can find one of those plastic plant dishes for less than 99 cents each. Pick up 2 of those. They have to be the same size. It doesn't matter what color. Use a pair of scissors and cut a small hole on anywhere on the dish so your snake can get in, and you're done. Put a hide on the cool side, put a hide on the warm side. It has to be identical, so that way your snake doesn't get to pick and choose which one it wants to sit in. If it feels secure in one hide but not the other, it's not going to move. And if it's not going to move, it's not going to warm up or cool off properly. Ball pythons are that picky, so you have to make sure it's equal in size. It doesn't matter what color, like I said. So the best option I find that works for me, and again, this is not my idea, it came from the breeders, is to use one of those small plastic plant dishes and just cut a hole in it. Those dishes should be, I think, 6 inches in diameter. You find them in any garden shop. And once you have that done, and by now I'm assuming you already quarantined your snake for a while, you had him for a while, and he hasn't eaten for you, and it's showing no signs of illness like mites. If you have mites, you should see it by now in the water bowl, or when you handled your snake, or in the substrate like paper towels. You would be using paper towels to quarantine your snake. At the beginning, you would see these black little pepper flaky thingies. Those are mites. They're very, very small. You gotta get rid of the mites before anything else. If it's sick, if it's mucus coming out of its nose, if it's breathing through its mouth, if it's for some reason acting not usual like it should, if there is any signs of illness, scale rot, if the bottom looks like there's any discoloration that you're worried about, or if there is a bump, you feel a bump from head to toe. These things should have been examined when you first picked up your snake, or before you purchase your snake if you go to an expo or a pet store. You gotta feel all these things and check for all these things before you buy your snake. But if you don't, if you end up getting it by mail, or you haven't checked your snake, make sure you check these things. If it's sick, it needs to be addressed first. You gotta make sure all the medically your snake is safe and healthy. So if it has issues, it has mites, you don't need to take it to the vet. Mites can be treated. There are videos out there on how to treat mites. I'm not going to discuss that in this video. But if it has mucus coming out of its nose, if it's breathing through its mouth, if there's cheesy looking things coming out of its mouth, that's mouth rot. If the scales, the belly scale, is burned, you especially, I can't stress enough, respiratory infections, those things needs to be seen by a vet. You need the proper antibiotic, and you need to take it to the proper reptile vet. So make sure you call ahead before you go to make sure that they know what they're doing. Not all antibiotics will work against respiratory infections for snakes. They may have to do a culture first before they prescribe you the proper antibiotic. So once that's cleared, most likely you shouldn't have a problem with your snake. Most not just ball python, most snake keepers, breeders are very good breeders. Most of them do sell healthy snakes. You shouldn't have a problem. So this video really pertains to those healthy snakes. But if you do have these problems, I would address them first, then come back to this video after it's healthy. So you have hides, temperature, humidity. You have downsized your tub, substrate, and you've checked you made sure that your snake doesn't have mites. Add the aspen. Use aspen. Lay about 2 inches of substrate, or if you don't have aspen, cocoa husk is good too. This is cocoa husk. Look how fluffy it is. Something where it can burrow in and out and make it feel secure. So about 1 inch or 2 inches of this cocoa husk or aspen. For tubs, because your humidity automatically is pretty high, about 50 to 70 degrees, 70%, not degrees. I don't use humidity substrate. Cocoa husk dries up very quickly, so I'm not concerned. Like, I wouldn't use cypress mulch or cocoa fiber because that stuff stays really wet for a really long time. And the problem with scale rot is when you have wet substrate and you have bacteria and your snake sits on it unwillingly, or you don't know that it's dirty, bacteria get between the scales and then there's an infection. So, and then you have another problem with airflow. If there's not enough airflow or ventilation, you may have a problem with mold. So for me, I use drier substrate for tubs. I don't use cocoa fiber. It stays wet for way too long, longer than I'm comfortable with. However, most breeders are fine with that. So it could work. Like, let's say your baby snake came from a tub and the breeder used cypress mulch. You should use that. Try that if you know the breeder's using that. If you don't know, then I will go use aspen or cocoa husk, 2 inches, two inches of layer of substrate. Add a little water bowl, and you're good to go. The next step is don't touch your snake. Don't handle your snake. I know how much you wanted to do that. I know you want to pick it up and snuggle it and whatever. Do not bother your snake. Place that tub, place that cage somewhere quiet. No, somewhere with the least amount of foot traffic. Not the living room, not the TV room. Put it in your bedroom. Put it in a corner of your bedroom. Away from your other snakes, of course, but put it somewhere quiet and dark. If you can't, you don't have a little dark place to put it, use a towel and throw it on top of it. So that way light doesn't get in there. Keep it dark, keep it quiet, least amount of foot traffic. Please don't leave your tubs, your tanks on the floor. They can feel the foot vibrations. It scares them. Pick them up, put them on a table, on a dresser. So don't leave them on the floor. Get them off the floor, put them somewhere quiet, put them somewhere dark. Do not bother your snake. You can look at it, you can check on it. If you see any poop that you can pick up right there and then, do it. If you see the water bowl is dirty, you can clean it, but don't touch your snake. Don't bother your snake. Leave it alone for a week. 1 whole week, you will leave it alone, unless you have any reason you must remove him or touch him. 1 week later, you should know by now what your breeder is feeding it. If your breeder didn't tell you or you're not sure, a lot of times these ball pythons, baby ball pythons, are fed hoppers, meaning baby mice. Baby mice. Nothing smaller than a hopper, unless you have a very good reason to. Ball pythons, when they hatch, they start eating hoppers after hatching. So your snake should be older than that, and it should be ready to take on a bigger prey. But we're going to go back to basics, remember? So we're going to start with hoppers, just to get them to eat, And not only that, mice have a certain smell that's a little bit different than a rat. I find them stinkier than rats. I always had better success with feeding mice to snakes than rats. I don't know. I mean, to me, they stink more, but it could be, it smells like chicken to them. So, and not only that, I find that a hopper mice it's just a little more jumpy. It moves a little better than a rat fuzzy. So whatever, if you know what your breeder's feeding it, use that. If your breeder's using a live red fuzzy, use that. If you don't know, most of the time, generally they use hoppers because they're cheaper, they're more available than red fuzzies, and snakes get a better reaction, eat better on hoppers too. So you will pick up a hopper that morning. You place your hopper in a tub or in a small 10-gallon or 5.5-gallon tank, and you put it right next to your ball python's tub. You leave it there. Give your mouse a little bit of water and a little bit of cereal or grains or some food to eat, or a piece of carrot. Because when this mouse is in your care, You are responsible for its care. I mean, even if it's turning out to be snake food, we have to be humane and kind to all animals, not just the snakes. And believe it or not, most snake keepers were not thrilled to live feed. We're not. We do it because we have to. We are snakes to have to eat. But, and to be honest, I prefer frozen thawed over live. I've done both, but if I have a choice, I go frozen thaw. And I always try to switch them. So for now, as much as you may not like it, you may have to start with live because your snake hasn't eaten. If your snake hasn't eaten for 3 weeks especially. So if you don't want to feed live yet, you're not ready to do that because it can be pretty scary for new keepers, then don't. If your snake hasn't eaten for 2 weeks, that's fine. You can wait another week and try with a frozen thaw. Make sure you heat it with a hair dryer. Don't put it in a microwave. Heat it real good. Warm it up really, really hot, but not cooked. Don't use boiling water. Use warm water, hot water, but not boiling. Do not cook your mouse. Then you heat it up some more with a hair dryer. The hair dryer method works. You heat it up for a couple of seconds, and then you try to offer it, not with your hands, but with a hemostat. You would offer it at night. When it's dark, at nighttime, you offer it. And if they're hungry, if they're willing to eat, you should have a strike almost immediately. If they won't take it, you leave it overnight and see if they'll take it. A lot of times they won't because they go by the temperature of the prey. And that mouse is going to get cooled or the rat's going to get cooled over time. But you never know. Some snakes like this one, Scruffy, at the beginning, he won't eat unless I leave it in his cage. So even though he's not a ball python, but some ball pythons just won't do it when you're around. They know that you're there. So you would leave it in the cage. However, if you waited, you tried, and it's been almost 4 weeks now, it hasn't eaten for you, and you would only attempt once a week, not once every day or every other day. I don't care how anxious you are. You must wait. Don't touch your snake. Leave it alone. It's going to be fine if you let it be fine. If it's not sick, then you leave it alone. Don't take it to the vet if you don't have to. The vet will just force feed it and that will make things worse. So if after about 4 attempts, which is 4 weeks, and it's not eating, then you will have to use the live method. You will have to try a live hopper or a live rat. It's not pleasant for some people, but it's what you have to do. It's what you signed up when you decided snakes are going to be your pets, especially a picky eater. So if you have to use a live hopper, same thing, like I said, you buy the live hopper in the morning, you put it in a tub or a tank, give it some food and water. You sit that tank next to where your snake is, the tub. You leave it there. By nightfall, that smell of that mouse should be able to get an attention of your snake, okay? You would pick that mouse up with a hemostat. Don't use your hands because you could get bit. Or if you really like it, you can pick it by the tail. But I'd rather you just pick it up. Somehow that's safe for you as well and not traumatic for the mouse. You don't want it to panic. And then you gently put it into the tub. Close the tub. Cover it so it doesn't see anything on the outside. And then just step away for a few minutes. But don't leave the room. Step away. And just wait. You should have a strike almost immediately. You should hear something, whatever that is. You should notice that it's been eaten or not. But either way, you should hear something in the next 10 minutes. So let's say you wait about 10 minutes. Go back, check on your snake. If the hopper is still there, wait another 10 minutes. And make sure everything is dark and quiet around your new baby snake, okay? If it's still not eaten 10 minutes later, take your hopper out and put it in the tank. Try again next week. Hopefully your hopper won't grow too big for your snake. If it's too big, then that's another problem. But that's the sacrifice you have to make if you are feeding a picky eater like ball pythons. You may end up with a mouse or a rat that has nowhere to go because your snake decided not to eat. A lot of times this trick will work. A lot of times the trick the information I just provided to you in this video, they will work. A lot of times your snake is not eating is number 1, insecurity. Number 2, husbandry. If you fix those two, if you make the snake feel safe and secure, if you're able to get your temperatures right, your humidity right, you should be able to succeed. You shouldn't have any problems. That method had worked for me, not just for ball pythons, but also for my dumeral boa and my other picky eaters that I have. It has worked very well. It's just ball pythons happen to be pickier. There are some exceptions to this rule, like once it had grown into an adult, especially for males, because males mature a lot faster, they will go into a fast. Males can stop eating around as early as 1 year of age or even 3 years of age. Once they mature, you should see a slowdown. They may fast, or even wintertime when it gets cold. They may not eat for 4 to 6 months in a row. That's normal. That's very normal. Females may eat a little bit longer, and they usually stop eating when they hit a certain weight. So there's a lot of ideas of, why they do what they do. The point is, ball pythons are what they are. They don't eat that much in the wild. They don't get weekly feeding in the wild. They eat when the food is available. So they do starve for the majority of the year. That is why ball pythons, no matter what morph you had or how long you kept them, when your snake refuses to eat, your adult snake, now not the baby, but the adult already had eaten for you and grown, okay? It had eaten all these years for you and suddenly it stopped eating. That's completely different than from a brand new baby ball python. Your adult ball python no longer feels just as insecure as it did when it was a baby. Unless you bought it new, an adult breed or something. But I'm talking about if you had your snake for a while, it had grown up and now it stopped eating. You can try the same technique, like downsizing your tub. You could downsize your tub. You could try a live feeding again, even though it switched to frozen thaw. You could try a different prey, but I don't want to go too much into that. This video is really about baby ball pythons. For adults that don't eat, you should check other resources. I really don't want. I had an adult who had been difficult to eat as well, but I really don't want to talk too much about that because there's just too much going on, and yeah, there's just way too much information about that, and not all the tricks work either. But at the end of the day, ball pythons, once they start eating as a baby, they eat very well. So once you start to get it to eat, do not handle it after it eats the first meal. After it eats 3 times for you, meaning you have to wait 3 more weeks. Once it eats 3 more weeks, 3 more attempts for you, consistently, then you can start to handle your snake in short periods, like 5 minutes here and there, and no more than 3-4 times a week. Your snake will live for about 30 years, okay? It's here for you to hold and pet and cuddle all you want, but at the beginning, you gotta make sure your ball python's eating, or else it's just gonna starve to death before you even get to enjoy your snake. Adult ball pythons can go months long fast. They can do it if they're healthy, but not a baby. Anyways, I hope you find this video informative, and next time I will make a video about my dumerils boa, who was my picky eater, my second picky eater. And they're also known to be picky eaters as the babies, but I'll talk about it next time. The tricks are about the same, but slightly different because they are a different species.